world and locked in a cage by beings who think you're nothing more than a test subject. Amusing, primitive, powerless. But what if that cage became your classroom? What if, instead of breaking, you learned everything about your captors until their own technology, their own laws became your way out? This isn't a story about escape. It's a quiet revolution, and it starts with one girl, one mind, and a galaxy that never saw her coming. If you are new here, then please subscribe this channel and show thumbs up by liking the video. Now let's move to this wonderful story. The sky above the city was clear the night Nira Valen disappeared. She had just finished a long shift at the university's robotics lab, the kind of shift that left her brain buzzing and her legs heavy. As usual, she walked home through the quiet streets, her backpack slung over one shoulder and her mind still running through unfinished code. She had no reason to expect anything strange. The air was cool, the streetlights flickered softly, and the vending machine at the corner store still refused to accept her coins. Everything was ordinary until it wasn't. The light came from above, soft at first like a camera flash from behind a cloud, then brighter, then all around her. 1 second she was stepping off the curb, thinking about instant noodles and a hot shower, and the next, she was staring at a ceiling that didn't belong to any building on Earth. It was smooth and seamless, glowing faintly blue. The floor beneath her felt too clean, too perfect, like polished metal that had never known dust. Her head ached, and her vision blurred slightly as she sat up, blinking at her surroundings. She was inside a dome, large, round, and artificial. It looked like someone had tried to recreate a human living space based on photos from an old catalog. There was a couch, a bed, a small kitchen, even a white picket fence awkwardly surrounding the bathroom area. The place gave off the unsettling feeling of something that was almost right, but not quite. Like a stage set built by someone who had never actually met a human. Nira stood up slowly, testing her legs. Her backpack was gone. So were her shoes. She reached up to her head and winced. A small, almost invisible bump behind her ear told her she wasn't just imagining things. They had done something to her. She tried not to panic, forcing herself to breathe. The walls of the dome were transparent on one side, revealing a hallway lined with blinking lights and metal doors. Beyond that, shadows moved, tall, unfamiliar, shapes watching her from behind curved glass. Whoever had brought her here, they weren't human. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. Years of studying machines and systems had taught Nira how to stay calm under pressure. Instead, she started observing. Every sound, every flicker of light, every time one of the watchers outside shifted positions, she took mental notes. They clearly thought she was harmless. That gave her time. A few hours later, at least she thought it was hours, 3 creatures entered the dome. They looked like a mix of insect, reptile, and machine. One had long limbs that clicked with every step. Another had smooth skin that shifted colors like a mood ring. The third floated slightly above the floor, its large black eyes scanning her carefully. "Specimen 4129 is conscious," said the floating one, its voice translated into a flat tone through a small device near its chest. "Prepare for baseline observation." Nira narrowed her eyes. "Specimen? I have a name." The creature paused. "Please clarify." "Nira Valen," she said. "I'm a person, not a test subject." They ignored her words. The tall one scanned her with a thin beam of light, murmuring something about primitive bipedal structure and insufficient cranial capacity. The mood ring alien noted her emotional state. Elevated stress, minor confusion, low aggression response. Suggest beginning psychological mapping. She remained silent through it all, memorizing their equipment, their language rhythms, the placement of cameras and sensors. These beings thought they were above her. They were wrong. They had given her a gift they didn't understand, a window into their world. And Nira had always been good at seeing the patterns that others missed. By the end of the first day, she knew 3 things for certain. First, she was aboard a vessel not of Earth. Second, her captors believed themselves to be scientists from a vast interstellar alliance. And third, they were vastly overconfident. She learned that the Galactic Assembly, as they called it, was made up of 29 intelligent species. Together, they considered themselves the keepers of civilized life in the stars. Any species that failed to meet their strict criteria, faster than light travel, stable planetary management, and cultural advancement, was considered primitive and excluded. Earth was one of many planets labeled unworthy. What fascinated them about humans, however, wasn't art or history. It was adaptability. Where other species evolved slowly or perished, humans built bridges, hacked nature, made tools. The assembly had decided that Earth was the perfect test case for studying survival. Intelligence. Translation. They were abducting people to poke and prod them for data. Most species, when faced with change, froze or ran. Nira watched and listened. They thought she was confused. They thought she was small. But they hadn't seen the way she traced the circuits on the walls with her eyes or how she timed the guards' rotations. They hadn't noticed that she had already figured out the color code for the food dispenser panel. She lay down that night on the unfamiliar bed, hands folded behind her head, staring up at the smooth ceiling. Somewhere, far above, Earth was spinning quietly, completely unaware of her absence. She didn't know if she'd ever see it again. But she knew this. The dome was not a prison. It was a puzzle, and puzzles could be solved. The lights in Nira's dome always turned on at the same time. There was no sun to mark the day, only the soft hum of the overhead panels that blinked to life with perfect consistency. She had counted the seconds. Every morning, exactly 86,400 ticks since the last cycle. Whoever designed the system believed humans worked best on a strict schedule. They weren't entirely wrong, but Nira wasn't just working. She was watching, learning, and planning. The aliens came in groups, each with their own purpose. First came Dr. Temorak, a tall, narrow creature with scaled skin and slow, deliberate speech. He treated everything like a math problem, including Nira. He asked her questions she knew were being used to map her intelligence. Some were puzzles, some were logic games, some made no sense at all. Nira played along, sometimes answering correctly, sometimes pretending not to understand. She had figured out early on that letting them believe she was smart, but not too smart, was the safest path. Veshna arrived next. She was smaller, fast-moving, and always seemed nervous. Her 6 eyes blinked in different directions, and she constantly took notes on a floating screen. Veshna was interested in emotions. She showed Nira strange images and recorded her reactions. Some were violent, others peaceful. Once she showed a picture of a school classroom and the readings on gay. Her device spiked. Unusual, she muttered. Heightened tension around structured learning environments. Nira didn't correct her. The truth was, she hadn't cared much for school. But she was starting to enjoy this strange classroom. Afternoons were for physical tests. That's when Glyth appeared, the shapeshifter. His skin changed color with his mood. Blue when bored, green when confused, red when excited. He ran endurance tests, had her lift objects, climb artificial structures, and solve mechanical problems. Nira always did just well enough to stay under suspicion. If she impressed him, they'd test harder. If she failed too much, they'd start probing deeper. So she stayed in the middle, just clever enough to keep them busy but not enough to scare them. She noticed that Glyth was a bit clumsy with tools. Once, while adjusting the control panel of her treadmill, he dropped a small metallic device. Nira quickly kicked it under the bench before he noticed. Later, she retrieved it and studied it when she was alone. It was a data chip, and though she didn't understand the alien interface yet, she saw enough to know it stored access codes. She hid it under the fake bookshelf in her dome, knowing it might be useful later. The fourth visitor was Commander Rouleau. He was the only one who didn't pretend to care about science. His job was to make sure she didn't escape. He was built like a wall and had small, intense eyes that tracked her every move. His belief in technology was unshakable. "This facility is sealed beyond your understanding," he said one day, standing stiffly at the edge of her dome. Neera simply nodded, letting him think he had won. What she didn't say was that she had already found 2 points where the sensors were weaker, right near the air circulation panels. At night, when the lights dimmed and the hallway outside grew quiet, Neera stayed awake. She lay still, but her mind raced. Every interaction, every routine, every slip in their systems, she filed them all away. She had learned that the entire ship ran on a kind of biological signal system. Each species had its own energy pattern, which the ship used like a fingerprint. That meant doors, systems, and machines didn't open unless they recognized the biosignature of someone allowed to use them. At first, that sounded impossible to get around, but Neera had already started building a plan. During her daily tests, she began to ask simple questions, always wrapped in childlike wonder. Why does this light change when I touch it? Why do you wear those gloves when you enter? Is it true that only certain people can open the food panel? The aliens seemed to enjoy explaining things. They believed knowledge made them superior. They didn't realize they were handing her pieces of the puzzle every time they spoke. One afternoon, Veshna made a mistake. She left her scanner on a nearby table during a break. Neera, pretending to be curious, picked it up. It buzzed slightly in her hand and displayed a glowing circle with a waveform dancing across it. Veshna rushed back and took it from her with a flustered apology, but Neera had seen enough. The waveform was energy, a biological signature, and the scanner had recognized hers. That night, Neera took apart her fake television. The wiring behind it was thin, but strong enough to build a basic signal tracer. She had no tools, but she was used to working with limitations. She twisted strands together using bits from the food tray dispenser and the loose screws under her bed. By morning, she had created a simple device that could detect the signal pulses of nearby aliens. The study continued. Day after day, the aliens prodded and examined, and Neera gave them exactly what they expected. A curious, slightly odd human who didn't pose a threat. But what they didn't see, what they never bothered to consider, was that every day they taught her more. Every scan taught her about their sensors. Every test showed her how their systems worked. Every assumption they made gave her a new advantage. They had built the perfect cage, but they had also handed the key to the only person clever enough to use it. Neera didn't know how long it would take. A week, a month, maybe longer. But one thing was clear. They were studying her, yes. But she was studying them too. And in the end, only one of them would be ready. Neera woke each day with the same quiet thought. Not today, but soon. Her routine hadn't changed on the surface, but under it, everything was different. The dome still buzzed with artificial light. The fake curtains still swayed from hidden vents, and the floor hummed beneath her bare feet. The aliens believed she was settled now, comfortable even. That belief worked in her favor. It gave her space to think, to work, and to prepare. Each day was a lesson. Neera had never been to space before, but this place had become her classroom. Not the kind with desks and chalkboards. This was a classroom built of glass, sound, and structure. Every movement of her captors was a teaching moment. Every beep, every flashing panel, every offhand comment gave her more information than they could imagine. She didn't need to steal blueprints. She was writing them in her mind. She paid close attention to the guards first. They were efficient, but not perfect. Every 8 hours there was a shift change. During that change, a 3-minute window opened where no one was watching the hallway outside her dome. She counted those minutes daily, matching them to the subtle dip in noise from the security monitors. On the 4th day of observation, she confirmed her suspicion. During that gap, her dome's outer sensors were briefly inactive. Just long, enough to slip through if she could bypass the lock. The lock itself was a different challenge. It was built into the dome wall, a flat panel with no buttons, no visible seams. Only those with the correct biological signature could open it. But Nira had learned a great deal about those signatures. She now understood that each alien's energy pattern was unique, like a password. What interested her most was the fact that the signature didn't need to be alive. Glyth had once removed his glove and the panel still responded to his detached gear. The system didn't check for life, just the right energy. That gave her an idea. During her next interaction with Glyth, she played dumb. She accidentally spilled a drink on the floor, forcing him to bend down and clean it up. As he did, his multi-tool slipped from his belt. Nira scooped it up and returned it, all smiles. "Sorry, I'm such a mess," she said. He gave a tired chuckle, his skin flickering green, and thought nothing of it. But Nira had just confirmed that the multi-tool carried a weak version of his signature. That night, she built something new. Using wires from the broken food tray, casing from the ventilation cover, and a power chip she had hidden for days, she fashioned a signal mimic. It wasn't perfect, but it could fake a short burst of Glyth's bio pattern. Just enough, maybe, to open a door. As she built, she thought about Earth. She missed the smell of coffee in the morning, the background noise of city streets, the casual chaos of human life. But she didn't allow sadness in for long. It clouded the mind. Instead, she focused on purpose. She reminded herself that survival wasn't her goal, freedom was. And more than that, she wanted to show these aliens that humans weren't primitive. They were simply underestimated. The next day, her patience was tested. Professor Ralvek, the ship's lead researcher, invited her into a larger room for a special session. He was a slow-moving creature made of translucent layers like stacked sheets of jelly. Ralvek loved to talk. He considered himself an expert on all things primitive. That included Nira. He asked her about Earth's governments, social habits, emotional responses. "Do humans truly value independence above survival?" he asked, his tone curious. Nira tilted her head. "Depends. Some value survival so they can keep fighting. Others value freedom because they know life isn't worth much without it." Ralvek made a sound like a dripping faucet. Interesting. But he didn't realize what was truly interesting to Nira. During their talk, she had managed to glimpse his access panel, which opened automatically at his presence. The signal wasn't complex, just consistent. A machine didn't need a brain to open the door, just a pattern. That evening, Nira tested her device. She timed it with the guard shift, crouched near the edge of the dome, and pressed the mimic against the lock. The panel buzzed. A soft click followed. Then silence. It didn't open, but it didn't raise an alarm either. That was progress. She smiled, returning to bed just before the next patrol. They didn't know. They hadn't seen. And every test she ran brought her closer to the key she needed. Days passed like this. Silent trials, careful questions, always watching, always learning. Veshna remained her easiest target. The nervous alien continued her emotional studies, completely unaware that Nira was mapping her habits to the second. Glyth, while smarter than he looked, trusted his routines too much. Ralvek spoke as though his words were gifts, never imagining they could be tools. And Rulo believed in walls more than minds. Nira saw them all clearly now. The cage they had built was advanced, yes. It used science and structure and systems. But they had forgotten one truth. A cage is only effective if the mind inside it believes it's trapped. Nira didn't. To her, this place was not a cell. It was a maze. And mazes always had exits. All you had to do was find the pattern. Nira waited for the right moment. And when it finally came, it didn't arrive with alarms or flashing lights. It came quietly, tucked between routine and oversight, exactly where no one would look. She had studied every corner of the ship, memorized the behavior of each alien, and tested her devices until she was sure they worked. Now, as the hallway outside her dome fell into its usual 3-minute silence during the guard shift change, Nira stood beside the panel and took a deep breath. She pressed her mimic device against the lock. A faint hum followed. Then a soft click, almost too quiet to hear. The door slid open just enough for her to squeeze through. No alarms, no flashing lights. Her heart pounded, but her face remained calm. She stepped into the hallway, barefoot, careful not to make a sound. The floor felt cold beneath her feet. The same polished metal she had stared at through the glass for weeks. Now it was under her control. She moved fast, following the path she had rehearsed in her mind hundreds of times. Right at the main corridor, left past the medical wing, straight through the hallway lined with containment pods. All the lights remained dim, running in their night cycle. None of the staff were around. Most trusted the automated systems. Rouleau, the security officer, had once laughed when she asked if anyone ever got out. Impossible, he had said. That thought made her smile now as she slipped through the final hallway and reached her goal. The command center. The door was sealed, of course. This time, she used the data chip she had stolen from Glyth's tool. It didn't open the door, but it did activate the input screen. Nira reached into her pocket and pulled out a thin wire coil she had built from leftover scraps in her dome. She connected it to the screen, then to the mimic, adjusting the settings she had memorized. It wasn't about guessing the code. It was about sending the right signal, the one the system was waiting for. The panel blinked green. The door opened. Inside, the command center glowed with quiet power. Screens hovered in the air, displaying maps, energy readouts, and communication logs. A circular terminal pulsed gently at the center. This was the heart of the ship, and from here, every system could be accessed, if you knew what to look for. Nira walked straight to the terminal. Her translator implant automatically converted the alien text into words she could understand. She began scanning files, searching for one specific protocol she had learned about weeks ago. Protocol 9-17. The Ascension Request. A forgotten legal pathway hidden in the Galactic Assembly system. It allowed any species, even a primitive one, to request recognition as an emerging civilization, if presented with proof of individual merit, technological understanding, and peaceful intention. She uploaded the data she had gathered, audio recordings, system logs, and scans of her completed engineering tasks. Then she wrote a simple message in clear, translated text. Representative of Earth. Species human requesting consideration for ascension. Evidence provided, no aggression intended. She hit send. The terminal confirmed transmission. Then it went still. Nira stood alone, the lights casting long shadows behind her. There was no dramatic response, no sirens, no interruptions, just silence. And then a voice came through the room's speaker system, calm, official, and unmistakably alien. Request received. Under review by the Central Committee. Please remain in your current location. Within minutes, lights across the ship began to shift. Doors locked. Systems redirected power. She wasn't being captured. She was being acknowledged. The ship's internal AI had flagged her message as legitimate, and by the rules the Assembly had written long ago, it had to respond. Rouleau arrived first, bursting into the command center with a stunned look on his face. How did you, he began, then stopped. She turned toward him, calm and unshaken. I read the instructions, she said softly. Next came Ralvek, Veshna, and Glyth. They didn't understand what had happened. Their data screens showed nothing abnormal. Their systems weren't being hacked. The human hadn't broken anything, she had followed the rules. You used our own protocols? Ralvek asked, his jelly-like form wobbling with confusion. You gave me everything I needed, Nira said. You just didn't realize it. The Assembly's response came within an hour. A live holographic message appeared in the center of the room. A council of different alien leaders, some floating, some rooted to the ground, others little more than light, watched her with interest. You are not what we expected, one said. I know, she replied, but maybe that's your mistake. They asked her questions about Earth, about her actions, about her intentions. Nira answered honestly. She wasn't trying to fight anyone. She only wanted to prove that humans didn't need to be studied. Like animals, they could learn, adapt, and build. They already had, and they didn't need weapons to make a point. By the time the message ended, Earth had been moved from primitive species to candidate for observation and cultural dialogue. It wasn't a full welcome, but it was a beginning, and it had come not from war but from knowledge. The ship's crew had no choice but to let her go. Not as a prisoner, as a representative. As she walked through the hallway for the final time, the other enclosures watched her. Some still held beings like her, taken from different worlds. She looked at them, then back at Ralvik. "Change starts small," she said. Later, standing in a small shuttle headed for Earth, Nira watched the stars pass by. Her heart felt heavy, but not with fear, with purpose. She hadn't escaped a cage. She had outgrown it.